The fact is, I saw so many more deals. And this is true even of me now, presiding over 400 new customers a month. I am still really, really good at closing a deal. It actually only gets harder and more intense the further up the rung you go.
Everyone wants to build stronger pipeline, but only a few know how to make it happen. If you're listening to this show, you know outbound is not dead. You just need a little help building a system that actually works. Well, you're in the right place. I'm Todd Busler, and on this show, we're breaking down the plays, processes, and frameworks behind repeatable pipeline growth, straight from the people who built it. Let's get into it. Hey everyone, excited for our episode today with Terrence Falk. He's the VP of Sales at 8am, a vertical SaaS solution focused on lawyers, accountants, and other PS professionals. What's really interesting about his journey is he started as a corporate lawyer, kind of stumbled his way into law school, worked at one of the top San Francisco-based corporate attorneys, and then found his way into more of a business development function. He enjoyed it so much, he decided to hop into SaaS sales, and today he talks about that journey, how that skill set was really compelling for a career in SaaS sales leadership, the mistakes he's made along the way, and now how he has a machine running at 8am doing over 400 deals per month. Enjoy the episode. Terry, what's happening? Appreciate you making some time.
Likewise, man, this is great.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into it. I think, your background and how you got to where you are is very interesting. And I think inspiring for a lot of people trying to figure out what motivates them, what they like in careers. And then also for some of this like vertical specific SaaS, what you're seeing. So I'm excited to dive in. I wanted to start right there, Terry. You've gone from law to pioneering sales, partnerships, building sales organizations. What drew you to sales leadership?
Like any good thing, it happened by accident. And I'll kind of start from the beginning. I went to law school as a kind of liberal arts person in the mid-aughts, in like the fat tail of the recession with not a whole lot of prospects. So I kind of asked myself, how do I make money reading a book and writing and arguing with people? And I'm like, oh, I'll just go to law school. I wasn't one of these people who thought they were going to be some kind of constitutional scholar or like sexy courtroom lawyer on Suits. Like it was the option that I took. And so with that backdrop, I fell ass backwards into like a really good corporate legal role. And it was a kind of a Island of Misfit Toys, the group that I was with. We were doing this outsourced in-house legal practice for big companies. And we used a lot of technology to do it. And as I progressed in that role, I did that for 5 years. In the last 2 years, I kind of informally and then formally became the guy who brought on the new clients that were mostly big tech companies. And so I spent a ton of time in the Bay Area. That was where my firm was based. So I had partners at the law firm who were just like making introductions and meetings I had no business getting on my own, moving legal services. And when I did that, I didn't realize it at the time. I was managing a channel partnership without knowing it. I had a really close relationship with a software provider that if they didn't already have it, they had to buy it in order to use us. And so that was where I got hooked up with the head of sales at that company. And I found out I was making a lot less money than I probably should have been. That's sort of how I ended up in SaaS sales. Along that trajectory, I had developed a lot of context in this little niche legal services tech sector, which is actually, even though it's super specific, is really big and has really important buyers in it. And I took a flyer on a startup in that very same space after their Series A with very little leadership experience, but a lot of knowledge on the buyer and the value of this particular product. And by the seat of my pants, I built a sales team and we went from Series A to Series B, which was both really, really amazing and accelerating for my career, and also an unmitigated disaster, like everything about it. I made so many mistakes. I was successful a lot of times in spite of myself, but I learned so much along the way. I developed great contacts along the way. I developed a great AE network along the way, and that many of whom are with me at 8am and doing amazing things. It was sort of one of those fires in which you were forged kind of moments for me that's gotten me where I am. A lot of luck and hard work and stress and just mostly gratitude now where I'm sitting.
Yeah, if anyone's been through that kind of go-to-market leadership role at seed, Series A, Series B, and doesn't describe it the way you just did, I always say they're full of shit. Like you don't realize, but like that's what it looks like. That's what it feels like. And you're always kind of like zoom out and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, it didn't feel like this, right? When you're there. But what skills do you think going through the formal, law school, actually doing the lawyer role before it sounds like you got more into like a BD capacity within the law firm, like which of those skills do you think have helped you and which ones do you think were super transferable? Because there's not many lawyers I know that go and have super successful kind of go-to-market leadership careers.
Yeah, part of that is because now that I spend all day talking to thousands of lawyers in America through my team, what I've come to find the reason for what you just described is that people who hang a shingle and decide to practice law are salespeople because they have to be. They're entrepreneurs. They are constantly thinking about how to add new business. They're thinking about how to convert leads, all the rest of it. My path is definitely unique. But to your first question, what did I gather in that along the way? I think that like most importantly, it was the ability to crunch down something really, really big and complex and complicated into something that somebody can understand on a deck slide, in a phone call, in a 30-minute meeting. That's what lawyers do all day, particularly corporate lawyers who talk to in-house corporate lawyers who on their plate have a million different things that they keeps them up at night. So I had to get really good at giving the headline on something that most lawyers are like really detail intensive. And so like if you aren't good at like going one step up and boom, 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 here's what you need to know, why you need to care about and what we're going to do. I think that being able to do that made me really good at selling enterprise SaaS, even though it was to the same market. I understood the buyer, but I also understood how to do that. And then it made me really good at leadership, particularly in the part of leadership that everyone thinks about leadership in terms of like management and how hard that is. You have great content on this, but there's not a lot about how you manage up and how you communicate up about what you're up to and why people should care or what you don't want people to care about and start yelling at you about. That's an art and a science too, that I think when I look back on it, it was sort of the crisp writing and persuasion and sort of analytical thinking that got me there a lot faster if I hadn't done that.
It's a really interesting point because I think some of the best individual salespeople I work with have worked with and sales leaders, that is like a not so talked about skill set or trait that matters a lot, right? You've been in a meeting, the best salesperson's like, okay, I can summarize a 60-minute call and be like, here's the 3 things they said that really matter. And like, that's hard to do, right? And the same thing happens at the manager level. You're like, here's what's happening across hundreds of calls. Here's the 3 things we have to do. It is a skill set that I think is often overlooked and very powerful. Terry, talk to me about that first company you went to. I believe it's Athenian, right? That you joined super early. They probably had some early sniffing of product market fit. And they said, all right, Terry, you've never been at a software company. Go figure out how to build this thing. What did you walk into? What did the pipeline motion look like? How did you even approach this? And as much as you're comfortable, I'd love to hear about some of those mistakes because I think there's a lot of learning in those mistakes for other people.
For sure. What did I walk into? I walked into a company that has a really, really good product in a field of products that are kind of an afterthought for most of the companies that sell them. And at the time, they struck up a really clever partnership with one of those companies who just had this thing that they were just ready to kill, and they just gave Athenian its customer list. So Athenian had already had a pretty robust founder sales motion with a bunch of really big clients, and then supercharged that growth with some inorganic growth that came from this partnership that got them even more. So I was coming in at the tail end of that. And at the time they had one sales rep who stuck along for the entire ride that I was there, who was kind of at the time order taking. He was an expert in, all right, you're on this old platform. Let me help you feel comfortable moving over to us. Sign here. And so what I had to do was, one, come up with a plan to get to the number that they had agreed to as a part of their Series A for 2021, which included adding bodies, making demands of marketing, determining whether we should add a BDR function or not, We didn't do that, and we should have. That was mistake number one. Mistake number two was making a bunch of really bad hires because I had just never done that before, which is to say nothing of the people that I hired that didn't work out. It was me. I just didn't hire the right people, and that was very painful. But I started there in November of 2020. For Q4 of 2020, basically, I was helping with some of the last big deals that were founder led, and kind of proved my worth by knowing how to structure an enterprise SaaS agreement that made sense. That wasn't just like, we will do anything to get this logo. Please just sign with us, to like, here's how we negotiate this and how we can structure this for long-term success for both parties. I had my name on a couple of large deals then while I was figuring out how to scale a team, which I had no idea, no business knowing how to do. Q1 of 2021 was just like rake after rake that I stepped on, the cartoon where someone steps on a rake and it hits them right in the nose like that. I just kept doing that. I made bad hires. I didn't have any kind of real outbound motion other than like companies that I knew that didn't use us, that were probably not the right fit for us. I didn't know how to integrate with a marketing partner. There was just so much there that looking back on, I'm like, wow, you were an idiot, which I wasn't. I just wasn't experienced. But knowing what I know now, that's how it looks when I go on the way back machine. Q2 to Q4 of 2021, everything just kind of snapped together. It was still hard, but I was just comfortable enough and had been through the fire enough to, one, not be stressed, which I think is also a thing that nobody talks about when you step into the fire for the first time, especially if you're staking your reputation on it, which I felt like I was. It was awful for that first bit because I just was constantly questioning myself of whether I did the right thing, whether I should be doing this, whether I should be in sales, whether I should be in sales at a startup. Should I just hang a shingle and be a lawyer again? Like there was it was a constant existential crisis. Once I got through that and calmed down a little bit, I made lots of really good hires. Like I said, I brought lots of people with me to where I'm at now. And we got religiously focused on who we should be selling to, which I had a lot of help in doing from the ELT at Athenian, right? Where they were like, we're looking at our results here, Terry. Here's where you should focus. I needed somebody to tell me that. And it was a really good lesson for me. And then we got from Series A to Series B. It opened up this opportunity to run a mid-market team at a larger company where it was at a different stage that I found really compelling and interesting. And then a couple acquisitions and deals later, and I'm running a team of 50 sales reps doing 400 deals a month. So it's been a blast.
I want to get into a lot of that. There's one point I want to double click into that experience, actually 2 points. So mistakes around what I heard there, not building the BDR function, probably underestimating, okay, I need to understand demand and pipeline before I even think about the hiring part, right? Like common mistake. I think the mishires, everyone has gone through that, me included, the integrating and dealing with marketing. I always tell people like none of this stuff is rocket science, but if you haven't seen it once or twice or know what good looks like, it's hard to learn, right? Two questions. I actually just got off a conversation with someone I hired in the past that now is in their first head of sales role at what sounds like a very similar stage company that you did. And he was running into this issue around the balance of, hey, he's being forced to build and hire a team, but he's still in that player coach role, responsible for some of the deals. What learnings do you have from that, or like advice do you have for people in that shoes that you were Q4, Q1, 21, 22?
The way I look at it, I have become a much better individual contributor from having led and having been through that than I would have been if I had just decided I'm just going to be an enterprise AE and then a senior enterprise AE and then a senior enterprise AE at Oracle. Like I could have followed that path too. The fact is, I saw so many more deals. And this is true even of me now, presiding over 400 new customers a month. I am still really, really good at closing a deal. It actually only gets harder and more intense the further up the rung you go. And so in that instance, looking back on it, that was some of the most formative time in my career as a seller, having to manage a big pipeline, being head on the table for every single deal that was there, making sure nothing went wrong, balancing that against like good management and leadership practices, which is really hard too, and something I still struggle with. And like, I guess my advice, which is what you asked me for, embrace it. Just lean in, look at it as an opportunity to show your existing team what good looks like and bring them along for the ride and make it their win as much as you possibly can and learn as much as you possibly can. If something is broken because that you find out because you're the one trying to close the deal, fix it before you hire 5 people. If you need to ask for something, if and you're the functional head of sales and you're trying to close deals and you can't because you need something from onboarding that you don't have, or you need a capability from product that you don't have, or there's something where do it, figure it out before you bring people on. That's your chance.
100%. Okay, so now you've learned a lot there. You got a lot of the battle wounds. The second time around, I always say you're not 2 times better. You're usually like 10 times better, right? Because you've seen all of this. Now, you joined AffiniPay. It's almost 4 years now. I know the company is rebranded. We'll get into that. But
Yeah.
what did you walk into there? And specifically, I'd love to learn like some of the mistakes you made around not hiring BDRs or thinking about demand. How did you address that head on at Nuco?
Okay. Funny enough, we're 8 a.m. now. It's public, so we don't have to do Nuco stuff. So when I joined 8 a.m., I joined as a mid-market and expansion sales leader. And the mandate at that point was grow the company 20 to 30% in revenue every year until we get acquired. And we were private equity backed. We were much bigger than the past experience that I had at Athenian. So when I got there, most pipe gen at that time was inbound, even for what we called mid-market, which is not mid-market at any other company. It's still hyper SMB. It was mostly fish jumping in the boat. And again, looking back, it was a mistake that I made. It was not caring more about that, because you fast forward a little bit, that stopped. And I was like, oh shit, what do I do now? But at the time, it was a lot of stuff jumping in the boat. I think the learnings that I had were, one, this is a story that I always tell. The first one-on-one that I had as a floor leader for a mid-market sales team, it was with a rep who, all of them were a little bit nervous and skeptical of me. I think they thought I was going to come in and just cut them all down, which didn't happen. And this guy says to me, he's like, listen, man, I know it's our first meeting, but I'm going to miss my number this month. I go, all right, man, that's cool. Let's take a look. Let's pull up your pipeline. What do you usually look at? I go, no judgment. Let's just look at it together. So we do that. And he points out one deal and he says, yeah, I got this deal. They're all tied up. They're sold. I did 3 demos. I got the managing partner. I got the closing call in 2 weeks, but it's at the end of the month. So I'm worried about it. And I was like, what the fuck is a closing call? I was like, are you buying a house? Like, what does that even mean? I was used to, this is the first meeting I had. This was Tuesday of my first week. And I was used to okay, when you get the yes, you've got a month of arguing over T's and C's, and then another month of security review, which you're hopefully running in parallel, if they'll even do that. And then maybe you're getting the shit kicked out of you by procurement. So the idea, I go, what's a closing call? He says, well, it's when you get on a call and we close the deal. And I was like, okay, I guess I understand that conceptually, but I need you to tell me exactly what that entails. He goes, well, they opened a free trial. So I take them to the part of the free trial where they put their credit card in, and then they press the button and I charge the card. I was like, okay, so that I am clear, when you do that, that creates the Slack ping that tells everybody that you just closed a deal. He goes, yeah. I go, why the hell are you not doing that right now? And we literally sat there. He called his champion, who was this paralegal at this firm. And we told him hey, we're setting up our onboarding schedule for the next couple of weeks. I understand you guys are ready to go. It's meaningful for us and probably best for you if we just close this up right now. I know we have a call scheduled in 2 weeks. And I'm just sitting there on Zoom while he's doing it. He's sweating through his shirt. It happened then and there. And I was like, I will never do anything else ever again. This was so much fun. So I kind of learned how to be in a more frenetic, transactional, fast-paced environment. And at that time, I was just managing mid-market, which were our largest deals, which were still not very big. The average was maybe 7K. The biggest one was maybe 20, 25 we'd be super excited about. So when I became VP, I oversaw everything from the solo attorney all the way up to about 100 people. And I had to get really good at process and speed and just operational stuff that I wasn't super competent in. When I first started there, the thing that I regret not doing sooner was having a better understanding of how I was getting fed, because so much was just being thrown at me. And I was just training a team on being really, really good at getting pipeline and turning it into dollars by having a couple of value-based conversations with the right people as fast as you can. When I became VP, which was in April of 2023, oversaw the whole thing, that it didn't happen like this, but it felt like this. The inbound engine just sputtered and died right as I was set, like we got to like, it was April 1 that they announced that I was VP, and I kind of owned the whole recurring revenue target at 8 a.m. And by like April 15th, it was like, where are our demos? Like, where did those go? And we had to pivot on a dime to feeding ourselves in a really meaningful way. We had a BDR team, but it was mostly like inbound response because we got so much, right? We kind of just threw a big team at whatever we could find. It was sort of shark, and we kept the plane in the air doing that. But I described the method as like the Shark Tank method. Like, we just threw some chum in the water and they just ate it until there was nothing left. It was not efficient at all. It got the job done. And we've gotten a lot more sophisticated since then. The inbound outbound mix, I think, is at an appropriate level for the type of company that we are. But that was a long, very painful journey that brings us to kind of to today.
Hey listeners, interrupting the podcast for a quick 20 seconds for a Champify plug. If you've been getting value from our content via webinars, podcasts, stuff I write on LinkedIn, I hope you understand that we think about and take pipeline generation very seriously. If you're listening to this podcast, it means you care about figuring out outbound, figuring out how to be more creative to prospect into your top accounts and win more revenue. At Champify, what we do is turn your entire company's existing relationships into new revenue. Champify's AI finds your highest converting revenue opportunities, from former customers at new companies to previously lost deals ready for a re-engagement, and turns them into a repeatable pipeline engine at scale, all within your existing workflows and low learning curve, which means high adoption. We're generating 20% of pipeline for companies like S&P Global and working with some of the largest, fastest growing B2B orgs in the world. If you're interested in what we do, we have a compelling offer for people that are listening to this podcast. We'll go through a data test, we'll go through a closed loss audit, and we'll show you the potential pipeline opportunities you have within your existing systems. Email sales@champify.io and mention this podcast, and we'll present you with a compelling offer. Enjoy the rest of the show. Yeah, this is super interesting. So I think there's some subtle things you say there. Like, I read a lot, maybe you do too, about what Jason Lemkin writes about, and he talks so much about, hey, that first VP of sales, like, go get wins. Right? Like, sure, maybe you would have started this outbound process earlier, but you probably also like shrunk that deal velocity, increased the win rate, did all of these things. That's like, all right,
I set a company record in June.
For sure.
I started in May, right? Yeah.
Which like for most people listening, you're like, oh, you just told them to like pay now instead of 2 weeks. But like when you walk into a team that has done things the way they have, fresh perspective is amazing. Get some wins on the board. Okay, so you said you wish you did some of this outbound thing earlier, and maybe you had no idea that inbound was going to drop. When that happens on April 1st or April 15th, and you're like, oh shit, I see our inbound demos going down or calendars are empty, but you see something. You said this kind of Shark Tank style. I'm curious, like, how did you approach this? And also in your answer, I'd love to understand, like, how much different was that from the Athenian of like, here's how we're doing outbound? Because for me, it's different motion, deal sizes, but also it's 4 or 5 years apart, where I think outbound has changed a lot over those 4 years.
Yeah. And it's also two totally different categories. So they were very different. I'll start with my experience at 8 a.m. just because it's freshest in my mind. 8 a.m. has an incredible cross-selling opportunity because we dominate how lawyers get paid by their clients. That is our bread and butter. It always has been. And that capability integrates with software. And we have a huge unvended market of people who use us to get paid. The Shark Tank was letting the sharks into the cage where all of those cross-sell lists lived. And we acted so quickly, and we could, because many of them are 1 and 2 person businesses. It's pretty easy to say, hey, Todd Busler LLC. Hi, I'm talking to you now. Do you want to sign up for this? We had lots of conversations really early, and we optimized for speed. And on the one hand, we got some returns out of that, I think, kept the lights on. On the other, we burned through a really big list of great leads because we were not super thoughtful about doling them out. And in fact, the RevOps leader at that time, who's still a good friend of mine, built this like workflow automation called Give Me Leads, where it was just a thing in Slack where you could ask, like, you'd say, give me leads, and it would ferret out, like, is it owned by somebody? Are they already a customer? And it would give you 3 at a time. And then you could just drop them into a sequence. Like, it was so, like, it was a slot machine. And again, at the time, we did, I think, 550K off of stuff that we sourced from Give Me Leads. Just press button, get lead, make call. It was kind of a Pyrrhic victory in retrospect. Highly different from Athenian. We were not installed at all in any, except for the handful of large law firms and big in-house legal teams that knew me and our founder. So the outbound motion there had to be we had to do a lot more. The first iteration was just call all of these Fortune 500 companies that I know who are that's a 2-year sales cycle. It's not going to help us at all right now. So we had to do a lot more work on, like, where have we won? Truly. How long on average are those deals, and how have we typically gotten them? And what we found, it was mid-market tech companies that fit a certain profile internationally, and we're in a particular stage, sort of like pre-IPO or just post-IPO, right? Super narrow. And then we would call the general counsel or senior corporate counsel at those companies. We did great with private equity and real estate firms, and we did great with medium to large firms, particularly in Canada. That was it. And we designed territories that way.
How'd you figure that out, Terry? Sorry to interrupt you, but how'd you figure that out? Because I think that's a great example. I spend a lot of time talking with our prospects, customers, or even just peers. And, people are trying to figure out that thing of what you just said, which is essentially where is the niche that we should focus on? How did you figure that out? And what was the process to get there?
We focused on the wins first and foremost. So, like, I'm parroting my CRO now, Nathan Waite, who says, whenever you look at data, stay as far away from the input as you possibly can when you start, which I think is really, really good advice. So, like, we just looked at, like, okay, what dollars have we won first? Of those dollars, what is the most of what they look like? And it was those categories. And then it was like, okay, of each category, what was our win rate and sales cycle and average deal size? And then where did they come from? And we prioritized the ones that came inbound because there was natural demand, because they raised their hand and asked to look at us. And that was a signal that if we targeted those with a BDR team and with really effective AE outbound, we could get them into the pipeline. And that total list, the Canadian law firms was much bigger because there's just lots more law firms than there are mid-market tech companies with lots of entities in different countries. But it was less than 100,000 all in. And we could kind of pick and choose different slices where we also looked at location where we know we did really well. So, like, most Canadian law firms are in Ontario because Toronto is the biggest city there. And then usually the Toronto firms all have offices everywhere else. So, like, that was where we started. And that was sort of like our best and most effective territory. We had a couple people working it. And then the other one was California because most tech companies are based in California. And then you just build from there. The first iteration was everything, the whole list, pick what you can and call. This was a lot more focused. And I'm giving you the podcast version. It was a lot of hard work that required a lot of help that I didn't know to ask for at the time. I do now. This time around, our ICP is like, it's just so dialed in and so specific. And the TAM is so big that the state we're in now is we're still very inbound response heavy. We have a router. We have geographial territories today. We will. But the question is now is that when we do that, what are we going to find out, right? When we looked at this in a few months ago, I'm still shocked by this. We haven't sold $1 of anything in Oklahoma. And I'm obsessed now with making somebody the king of Oklahoma. Like, it just has to happen. I think that's what happens when you give somebody that's the impact of giving a geographical territories. You get stuff out of the places where you're not getting anything, and it's all accretive. So that's kind of the stage that we're in now.
So big TAM, clear ICP. Sure, there's some variance across different, sub-verticals or geos, as you mentioned. What does good outbound look like now? Because I'm sure it's matured quite a bit and a lot of work to get it there. Like, a lot of the people that come on this podcast are selling high-end strategic deals. Like, your motion's a lot different. So, like, what does good outbound look like for your team? What are some of the metrics you're holding people accountable? What's working or what has been surprising? I know there's a lot there, but it's really interesting.
I know I've been thinking about when to tell this joke, but I'm really happy you brought me onto a podcast called Cracking Outbound because I've come nowhere close to doing that. So thanks for that ego boost. So take whatever I'm about to say with that in mind. Okay, what's good? So let me start with how we're structured. We have my software team has three segments: 1 to 4 person firms, 5 to 9 person firms, and then 10 and above. 1 to 4 has 4 teams focused on it. That's how much, and that's the bulk of the volume that we do. And the average deal is about 1.5 users per deal. So like it's mostly solo practitioners, of which there are hundreds of thousands, and I think 10 new ones hung a shingle while we were talking, right? Like that's that motion. 5 to 9 is a bit more strategic, but still very transactional. But you are now talking to more than just an owner operator. You're talking to an owner operator and her paralegal and maybe an IT consultant. And then 10 and above is a little bit more familiar sales cycle that you and I have done in our IC lives and what you're doing now at Champify. So the outbound motion looks very different in each of those segments. In the Shark Tank method, we actually removed the segment to incentivize people to go outbound because we actually sustained a lot of brain damage determining how big a firm actually was, even the ones that were in our database. So we just said, screw it. If you're working 1 to 4, if you're on our core team and you get a 26 user deal in your pipeline and you close it, congratulations, it's yours. And you just demolished your quota. And what we found when we did that was it actually was a big waste of capacity because think about it. If you were a core rep on my team and you fed your family on 1 to 4 user deals, your whole being would be on getting one deal that could hit your quota, right? Why would you do 6 demos a day hoping one of them closes every single day when you could do that? And so what we found is that it diverted a lot of what ended up happening is the great reps had deals that they didn't really have like they weren't really thinking about every day. And so their day to day was spent just taking credit cards and doing a great demo and taking a credit card, moving on. So their focus was on getting that big deal, and it came at the expense of speed and focus on what we needed them to do. So it was the right move at the time. We got big deals we wouldn't have had otherwise, but in this iteration, we're being very, very focused. So 1 to 4, their outbound activity is focused entirely on cross-selling firms in that segment that have recently signed up for our payments platform and are maybe 2 or 3 months into that decision. Because we just know we have signals from how they get paid, how many people pay them, how like all of this stuff that would denote various use cases that would suggest value from our software offerings that it makes sense to call them. And we can do that. There's tons of those every day that are not part of my remit. I have a VP counterpart that handles that business. So it's not, I'm selling the hell out of it. It's still really hard, but it's where we're focused for that team. My 5 to 9 and my 10 plus crew are doing a fair bit of cross sell, and they're doing some really targeted outbound on firms in particular practice areas. So immigration is a really important subvertical right now for us. We have a product that's dedicated to it, and this isn't political. It's just a statement of fact. The environment right now is making our immigration attorneys very busy. It's also making every lawyer that has undocumented clients an immigration lawyer. Like if you're practicing family law or criminal law or tax law, you're an immigration lawyer too. There's lots of compelling events there, external compelling events there that make them more prone to picking up our call. And they tend to be larger because they do a lot of kind of what we do. They have SDRs, right? They have intake. They understand conversion of leads and ROI and marketing, and they tend to be larger outfits. So that's where we focus them on immigration, personal injury, and then family law and general practice that have other signals where we can do competitive takeaways that we can find. Still a work in progress, still really, really hard, still doing a lot with a small team.
Makes sense though. I think a lot of people, try to say, hey, we have to do outbound in this way. It's like, actually, if like you have a more SMB motion, you have a lot of inbound, there's a lot of juice on like, okay, how do I just maximize this pie, right? How do you make certain changes, like you said, of stay in your lane because I know what our conversion is or expected value from a specific lead is going to be.
Totally.
So I think it's super, super good learnings on that front.
A point on that too is like the metaphor I like to use with this. The outbound that your team is doing and that my team at Athenian used to do is whale hunting. You're out in the middle of the ocean for a really long time. and you've got to be really good at throwing spears really, really accurately. The outbound that my team does now at 8 a.m., we're looking for a coral reef that we could just decimate. And then we got to go find the next one. But like, it's a much different, you're just kicking loose a lot of stuff and seeing what comes out and trying to catch it. And it's interesting too, like the word outbound has become kind of a touch point because a finance mind looks at outbound as like, it's an account that nobody has touched, that I didn't spend marketing dollars on, that I didn't spend BDR money on. It's totally cold. And we tried to run that to ground, and it just didn't make any sense. The market is too big. We're installed in too many places. Like, the deal sizes are small. They still have to be fast. You need to have some innate demand or connection to get in the door as fast as you can. And so the 1-to-4 motion that I mentioned, our conversions on that all throughout the funnel are about half of what they are from an inbound lead, right? Like lead to SQL to one. It's about half of that, which you would kill for in any outbound motion, right? So like you could debate whether it's outbound. Yeah, is it cross sell? Is it what? I don't care. Like it's sales generated pipeline that we know has a really healthy clip of conversion. And if my reps are doing it right now, it'll impact their this month. So that's where we're focused.
And then from a channel perspective, like, can you get automated email to work at scale? Or is this the type of buyer where like it's all about getting the right person on the phone? Like, how do you guide your team there? Is it a combo? Like, I'm just curious.
It's a combo. It's a combo. I am of the mind that, and I'm quoting my BDR leader, we win in the air. Like you're not going to feed your family emailing a bunch of people. If you were, you'd be in marketing. And our customers pick up the phone. They have to. They make themselves super visible. Their name, their face, their email, and their phone number are on a website where they tell you all about what they're up to. The challenge is doing that at scale is actually really hard. And you know this because we talked about it, because they're not very online. There isn't an API-able database full of every lawyer and the jobs that they've had and what they're up to. Like, it's not like selling to a VP of something at a mature company. You have to go to each of these websites. We've started to use ChatGPT to get us a little bit further along than us just clicking on Salesforce and then going online. But even that, as easy as that sounds, doing it against a list that's in the tens of thousands with a team of 50 and a team of, say, 15 BDRs is hard. There's always going to be alpha that we're not getting by doing it that way.
Terry, one thing, switching gears a little bit, one thing I see in a conversation with you that tends to be a common theme with some of, I think, the best sales leaders I talk to is you're not afraid to talk about your mistakes. It seems like you have really low ego and you're like, look, I'm relatively smart. I've tried these things. I wish I got it right faster, or I learned from XYZ. What do you think makes you effective as a sales leader? Like, where do you think you shine, or some things that you're working on improving?
Okay, where I shine, I think that even at the level I'm at now, where I have 1 to 2 leaders between me and a rep on any given team, I can still pull up a chair and I can look at a deal and I can add value without getting on the phone. Like I try to make myself really accessible and approachable in that respect, which in turn, I think endears the folks on the ground level to me, such that when I'm pushing down change management or trying to drive better results or whatever it is, I'm just that much more likely that people will follow my lead because I'm in it with them without being in every single deal, which that's taken me years and a lot of meditation to perfect. I think where I struggle, or what I'm working on, I think, is how you frame the question. I'm now at a point where I'm balancing kind of how I spend my time between really being on the floor and being an executive level person that runs sales. And I was really good at that at Athenian because the data set was much smaller. There were less deals for a higher dollar value, and we only had one product. And we were in the single digits of $1 million company then. So it's easy. The dashboarding is easy and analyzing it is easy. It's a lot harder when you're in the hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue and you do 400 new deals a month and you've got your marketing VP yelling at you about the fact that you're not calling his leads fast enough. And you've got your CRO yelling at you about win rates and deal sizes. And it's a level of kind of where we started this conversation. I've had to up level even more. It's lucky for me in that I was already innately good at that, at least just on a functional level. But how I do it it's been a constant. And then how that also interacts with my team below me and getting them to run alongside the new stuff that I'm focused on is always a work in progress.
I resonate with all of that. Resonate with all of that. It wouldn't be a podcast in 2025 without talking about AI. I'd love to hear what parts of the 8am platform you're excited about your customers tapping in and using AI. I know there's a lot of buzz around kind of verticalized use case, like the lawyers or other PS buyers or industries you're talking to. And then also any key use cases internally, either company-wide or specifically in the sales domain that are starting to yield some real output?
Yeah, it's a hot button issue with lawyers in particular. Generative AI in the context of rendering legal services is so fraught and complicated. And so like if you're in the legal memosphere that I am in, you're seeing the stories of people citing case law that doesn't exist and having their case thrown out because ChatGPT hallucinated. You're seeing all sorts of stuff kind of like that. And the market that I am in, which 8am being focused on more than just legal, is a professional business platform. It's how professionals get paid, acquire clients, and run their business. But in the legal world, there is the business of law, and there's a whole bunch of tech for that. And there's the practice of law, and there's a whole bunch of tech for that too. And then in our market, there's a couple of players that do both kind of half-assed. We are 1,000% in on business of law. We want you to acquire new customers, acquire new clients, manage their cases and their contact information and all of that stuff that you need to run your business really effectively, get paid in a way that they will pay you fast and make it easy, account for it in a way that doesn't get you disbarred, and then repeat the cycle. That's all we care about. We will partner with people who specialize in researching case law and in filing your court fees and in the practice of law. And I look at AI, and I think we look at AI in a very similar context. We don't want to be creating generative AI that's going to tell you what case to cite in your brief. We do want to help you get really smart on what a client needs from you before you have an intake meeting with them, right? We want you, who are a lawyer and maybe not a financial person, to be able to say to your 8am tools, how's my conversion rate on leads that I've gotten from the billboard that I put in the middle of New York City, right? Like that's not a natural thing for lawyers to know how to do. They do it, especially our customers, they do it because they have to, because they're entrepreneurs and they got to get smarter in it quick. But there's not a class in law school that teaches you how to be a good business person. So I look at AI the same way for me as a leader. There's things that I'm really good at. I'm a really good writer. I'm also a really good reader. Whenever I ask AI to write or read for me, I barf on whatever the results are because I'm like, that's just not what I would do. And I'm really good at that. I am, however, not great at staring at an Excel spreadsheet and deriving what the headline is. And ChatGPT is very good at that. And Claude is really good at that and then creating a really pretty visual. And so I will often have that up when I am pouring through on Monday mornings when I'm getting ready to submit my forecast. I will dump a lot of stuff into that to see what kind of insights I am missing because I have a lizard brain when it comes to looking at cells on a spreadsheet. And I think it's the same for our customers. They're lawyers. They're out to acquire justice for their clients. That is a human level task, and it always will be. I'm staking my flag on that. What's not, though, is they're not good marketers, right? Or maybe they are, but they're great at telling their story, but they don't know how to get it on the first, be the first result on Google. There's tons of things that generative AI can do to help you do that. There's tons of things that it can do to help you understand your business when you are just one person who has people coming into your door asking if you can keep them from being deported, right? Like it's going to make you many, many people but keep you focused on the thing that is most important to you, which is your clients and your legal services.
Pretty interesting similarity between almost salespeople and lawyers, right? Where essentially you're saying lawyers are really good at this thing. That work requires EQ and human knowledge and experience and expertise, but 8am is helping you with all of this stuff behind it so you can spend more time doing that. Much like, hey, Terry, get out on the floor, train, enable, hire. Now you're not spending 6 hours trying to put numbers together because AI can help you. So it's
Yeah,
interesting
100%.
kind of
You feel that at the rep
alignment
level
there.
too. You feel that at the rep level too, because from my perspective, the way sales at 8 a.m. is using generative AI, I am looking at it as how can I save every rep 5 minutes a few times a day? I don't, I didn't say I don't want AI doing any selling because it will, but like, because all of the stuff that we do is selling. But like, I would love AI to make the connection between what's recorded in Gong and how it filters into Salesforce as like a really tactical example. There's lots of ways that you can make that happen that make your data better, make your rep more focused, take things off their plate that they hate doing, that they don't do, or that they do and it's at the expense of. I have to think really religiously about capacity these days because of how high volume and how intense our sales cycle is. So that's kind of where I look at deploying it for us in a very similar way. I don't want to augment people's selling capabilities. I want to augment their selling operations and make it so that they focus more on
More time doing that thing.
talking to customers.
Exactly. Terry, this was awesome. We're at time. I appreciate you sharing your learnings, being so open with some mistakes you made, whether people admit it or not. I know I went through a lot of the same stuff you're talking about. So I appreciate you sharing. I'm rooting for you with 8 a.m. and thanks so much.
Thanks a lot, Todd. Likewise. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Cracking Outbound. If this was helpful, let us know by messaging me, Todd Busler, on LinkedIn, and share this episode with a friend that you think will be interested. If you want more resources about building and scaling all things outbound, you can sign up for our newsletter at champify.io/blog.